This is an audio summary of the course Corporate Governance held by Professor Lyubchev Timov. The corporate governance is a system which is used for the purpose of controlling and directing the companies. It ensures that the transparency standards are in line with international requirements, that shareholders are treated equally, and that the board and auditors are truly independent. The importance of corporate governance has increased in the past 15 years due to many companies being involved in high-profile corporate scandals that involve corporate power abuse, corruption, and alleged criminal acts undertaken by corporate CEOs. Poor corporate governance, usually through a combination of incompetence or criminal or corrupt practices, causes the eventual long-term destruction of the corporations and even societies. The reasons for this is that greedy people take as much as they can for their own short-term gains rather than reinvesting in the continued development. What is even worse is that corruption breeds a culture of bribery, blackmail, threat, cover-up, deceit, favoritism, and so on. Good governance enables sustainable wealth creation. Boards of directors are responsible for the corporate governance of companies. Corporate governance is a proper structure of the rules and the work practices that are to be followed in an organization. A board of directors controls this framework and ensures that accountability and fairness of the system. The quality of board performance makes a huge difference. Corporate governance regulates the relationship of the networks between a company's management, its board of directors, its shareholders, and its stakeholders. Good corporate governance is actually a balance of power among managers, shareholders, and boards of directors. It is used by corporations to establish order between parties whose interests may be sometimes in conflict. Finally, corporate governance has an overall impact on the economy. It not only benefits the company or its stakeholders, but the economy as well. By reflecting a positive image, the company can attract foreign investors and benefit the economy of the country. Different national models of board structure are found around the world. A majority of jurisdictions have one-tier boards. Other jurisdictions have two-tier boards that separate the supervisory and management function into different bodies. EU regulation offers the option of two systems for European public limited liability companies. Some EU countries have established a framework that gives domestic listed companies the same option. 3 countries, Italy, Japan, and Portugal, have an additional statutory body mainly for audit purposes. Both Italy and Portugal provide 3 options, which include models similar to one-tier or two-tier systems, in addition to the traditional model with a board of statutory auditors. Japan introduced a new hybrid type of board structure, a company with an audit and supervisory committee besides the current 2 models. One-tier corporate governance system, or the Anglo-American model, is the dominant model in the world. This model brings together the executive and non-executive board members. Shareholders elect the board of directors, and the directors appoints and supervises the officers or the managers' work. Two-tier corporate governance system, also known as a German model or as a European model, separate the supervisory function and the management function into different bodies. Such systems typically have a supervisory board composed of non-executive members and a management board which is composed entirely of executive members. In this corporate governance system, employees and labor unions are allowed to appoint at least 30% to 50% their representative in the supervisory board. The other 50 to 70% of the supervisory board members are appointed and elected by the shareholders of the company. There is no convenient formula for defining how many directors a company should have. though in some jurisdictions, company law specifies a minimum and or maximum number of directors for different types of company. For example, Tesco, a large multinational supermarket company, has 13 directors. Smaller listed companies generally have fewer directors, typically 6 to 8 persons. The board of directors are responsible for controlling the activities, to know what's going on within the organization, and managing the risks correctly. They are making strategic directions for the organization, and they are managing the relationship with the shareholders. There are two types of directors in the board: executive directors and non-executive directors. The executive ones are full-time members of staff and have management positions in the organization. Non-executive directors are part of the board of directors, but are not part of the executive team. They are not involved in the day-to-day management of the organization, but they control and advise on the decision made by the executive ones. The head of the board of directors is the chairman. The chairman acts as a leader of the board and ensures board's effectiveness. He sets board's agenda. He promotes culture of openness and debate in board. He designs appropriate induction programs for new board members and training programs for all directors. He ensures that the board members' performance is formally evaluated on an annual basis. The chairman has also an informative role. He ensures that directors receive accurate, timely, and clear information in advance of board meetings. He also holds separate meetings with non-executive directors. He facilitates good relationship between executive and non-executive directors. He represents the company to shareholders and other stakeholders. He also ensures effective communication with shareholders, probably using the chairman's statement or dialogue. The CEO is responsible for business strategy execution. He is responsible to the board for ensuring that the organization achieves its objectives, optimizing the use of resources. The CEO will be responsible for managing the risk profile in line with the risk level accepted by the board. The CEO has ultimate ownership of the control systems and should take the lead in establishing the control environment and culture. The CEO will examine major investments, capital expenditure, acquisitions and disposals, and be responsible for identifying new initiatives. The CEO will make recommendations to be discussed by the board committees. The CEO will be to deal with those interested stakeholders in the company, such as major suppliers, major customers, banks, governments, etc., etc. One of the independent non-executives should be appointed as a senior independent director to act as an intermediary with other directors and shareholders. They are responsible for holding annual meetings with non-executives without the chairman present to apprise the chairman's performance. They would also be expected to meet with the non-executive on other such occasions when necessary. Where there is a disagreement or dispute between the chairman and the chief executive, the senior independent director can intervene, identify issues that have caused the rift and try to mediate and build a consensus. The CID is responsible to hold at least annual with non-executive to review the chairman's performance and carrying out succession planning for the chairman's role. He acting as an intermediary for other directors as when necessary, and being available to shareholders and other non-executives to address any concerns or issues they feel have not been adequately dealt with through the usual channels of communication. The non-executive directors are very important players in the corporate governance system. Their independent role is maybe the most important role of all. To be really independent, the non-executive directors should not be an employee within the last 5 years. they should not have any material business relationship within the last 3 years. They are only compensated with a fee for director duties, no profit share or share options. They should not have any close family ties to the company, and they should not be involved in the cross directorships, which means that directors of two companies sit on each other's boards as non-executives. There should be at least 50% of non-executive directors in the board, excluding the chairman. The non-executive directors have also a people role. They can appoint and remove executive directors. They can decide about the compensation packages of the executive director as well, and they can be allocated to a nomination committee, including majority of non-executive directors. They have also risk role. They should access the risk management process to ensure that risks are identified, and they should access the internal control system to ensure that they are very strong. They are also allocated to the risk committee. One of the most important roles of the non-executive director is also the control role. The non-executive director should scrutinize the executive director's performance. They should monitor how the company's performance is reported and should allocate it to audit committee, including all of the non-executive directors. They also have a strategy role, which means that they are collective responsibility of the strategy direction of the company together with along with the executive directors. This means that they should evaluate and challenge the strategy decision made by executive directors. Which are the benefits of good corporate governance? Well, compliance with corporate governance principles recommended by OECD can benefit the owners, managers of organizations, and stakeholders, and increase transparency and disclosure by improving access to capital and financial markets, including the ability to attract equity investors, helping to survive in an increasingly competitive environment from mergers, acquisitions, partnerships, and risk reduction through asset diversification, and also adopting good corporate governance practices, leading to better internal control systems, greater accountability, and better profit margins. Which are the benefits to shareholders? Well, good corporate governance can provide proper incentives for the board and management to pursue objectives that are in the interest of the company and shareholders, as well as facilitate effective monitoring. Better corporate governance can also provide shareholders with greater security on their investment. And better corporate governance also ensures that shareholders are sufficiently informed. Which are the benefits to the economy? Well, empirical evidence and research conducted in recent years support the proposition that it pays to have good corporate governance. It was found out that more than 84% of the global institutional investors are willing to pay a premium for the shares of a well-governed company over the considered poorly governed companies. The adoption of corporate governance principles can play a significant role in increasing the corporate value of